4:31, we've got a lot to discuss today, so we might just get started while folks continue to come in. But hello, welcome. So happy to see so many of you here today, so many great and friendly faces. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Katie Tonkin. I'm the Director of Development and Communications at First United. And this is our first Toast Talks edition of 2025. And we're very excited today because we're going to be sharing highlights from the recently released annual report that covers October 1st, 2023 to September 30th, 2024. I'm just going to go and share the screen here. And have folks started to receive their annual reports in the mail yet? Anyone get theirs? Yeah, starting to trickle in. Amazing. So happy. So today, you're going to get to hear from a number of our different staff. I won't just be talking at you this whole time, hearing from them about their work and their impact in the Downtown Eastside. And we're trying a new format this time as well. So we're going to be hosting a little bit of a town hall discussion about what's been happening in the community these days, especially in light of recent events at City Council. But before we dive into things, I just want to also point out that our board of directors is joining us. This is their first in-person board meeting and AGM, which is following Toast Talks, since I think before COVID. And so on your screen somewhere, you should be able to see a group of our board directors tuning in from 312 Main. We're so happy to have them all here. So to get us started, I want to invite our Indigenous Spiritual Care Chaplain, Lauren Sanders, to welcome all of you into this space, all of us here together with a land acknowledgement. I'll kick it over to you, Lauren.
Hi, Bojo, Jayak, Lauren Nadejnakas, Oka Mukwim, Squat Omish Akomeo, Slewatuf Ejedian. These are the unceded, never ceded lands, homelands, home territories, ancestral territories of the Musqueam, Squamish Nation, and Tsleil-Waututh. May we talk about the past as we look forward to the future with all of the stewards of the land of Kumkumalai, where First United is. Iguian!
Thanks, Lauren. Appreciate that. All right. So what have we been up to for the past year? Got a bit of an overview here. As so many of you know, we do loads of things here at First United. We provide comprehensive wraparound services. And on our slide here, we've got some stats and facts and figures. But our work isn't about statistics or quantitative outputs. It's about serving the community and achieving our vision of a neighborhood where every person's work is celebrated and all people can thrive. And something that we talk about a lot here that I really kind of hold near and dear is that there's a lot of different ways that thriving can look for people. Sometimes it's having a full belly after a nourishing meal, and other times it's enabling people to uphold their rights. And these figures here, though, they shed light on how many lives we've been touching in so many different ways through our last fiscal year. And through all these figures here, we estimate that we served about 10,000 people last year, which is pretty remarkable, pretty incredible. And our annual report, if you've gotten it in the mail or if you looked at it online earlier today, it has a lot more kind of detailed stories and figures about each of these programs. So absolutely we'll let you read that, and I encourage you to read that. But I do want to take a moment to highlight a couple of things here. And so the first one is our tax program. So the tax program's been operating since about the 70s. Oh, sorry, that was our doorbell. Last year was a record year for the tax program. We filed more taxes than ever before. We returned over $1.4 million to low-income community members. And how incredible is that? It's just, it blows my mind. And that's tax returns for people in the Downtown Eastside. It includes seniors, students, people in hospital and in correctional facilities. And what we're really seeing year over year is that the reach of our program is growing, and we're so incredibly proud, so honored and touched that we can actually keep up with this demand. We've had an incredible tax clinic coordinator, Amanda Pellerin, in that role for many years. She's now the assistant shelter manager. We have a new tax clinic coordinator. So there are some shifts, but we're still keeping up and we're busier than ever. So with it being mid-March right now, it is tax season. And we got an update earlier this week that the tax clinic has already filed over 1,000 taxes just in March. It's 1,000 files in 20 days. It's really, really remarkable. And we have such an incredible group of people, staff and volunteers who help do that. So I really want to applaud our staff there for that really, really incredible output in that program, connecting people to economic security and the benefits that they're entitled to. The next thing I really want to highlight is in legal advocacy. So you might know that overwhelmingly our legal advocates handle cases related to tenancies and evictions. And our advocates they're incredible. They help people fight bad faith evictions. They literally prevent people from becoming homeless. And, it says 1,500 plus advocacy cases completed, but what really kind of hits home for me is this quote that was shared with us from an advocacy client, and we have permission to share this quote. So I'll just read it out to you. It says, "On behalf of my family, I want to express our deepest gratitude for the incredible support and guidance you provided during a recent tenancy dispute. Navigating the situation was overwhelming and stressful, but your expertise and compassion turned what felt like an impossible challenge into a resolution we couldn't have achieved on our own. Your tireless efforts not only helped us cancel an unjust eviction, but also upheld our rights as tenants in the face of numerous violations by our landlord. Thanks to your assistance, we can now move forward with peace of mind in our home, a stability that means everything to us. Please know that your work has made a profound difference in our lives, and we will forever be grateful for your support." I could rattle off more stats and figures about this program, but honestly, numbers are never going to be as impactful as giving somebody peace of mind and stability in their home, keeping people in their home, upholding their rights. So we're always just so thrilled, so proud of our advocates for doing that important legal work that folks otherwise wouldn't have access to. The last highlight that I want to point out here is about our shelter. So we operate a 51-bed shelter, minimal barrier, men's, women's sides, trans inclusive, and we're really proud of it. It's known in the community for being clean, safe, and for having really fantastic staff. And what means the most to me about our shelter is the fact that we work with people to get them into safe, permanent, affordable housing. Having a shelter is a really important stopgap measure, especially in the context of an affordable housing crisis. But we know, residents know this is not a permanent solution. And last year, we helped 26 shelter residents move into permanent housing. And this is something that really sets our shelter apart from others. Shelter residents can stay for as long as they need. They work really closely with our case planners so that they can stabilize their lives and work out what the next step is that's going to be right for them. Our approach to housing and the shelter is really proactive, and we're really proud to be able to help people transition into the next phase of their lives. And so you just got to think 26 people who were previously unhoused living in our shelter now have a place to call home. We're going to dive into some of our other program areas through this presentation as well. But I do want to say that our programs here are what we do, but it's not why we do. The why of these programs is based in our guiding principles of dignity, belonging, and justice. And you've probably heard us talk about these a lot. You've probably seen them in ads and on billboards. And it's really what underpins everything of what we do. And so when we say dignity, that means when people's basic needs are aligned with human rights. It's about shelter, water, sanitation, clothing, and one really great story that we have of, illustrating dignity. Amanda, our executive director, is going to share with you, and so I will pass it over to her to share that story.
Thanks, Katie. Hi, everyone. Oh, I love a little toast talk that highlights the prequel to the AGM and highlights all the work that we did the year before in our fiscal year. So one of the big things, as Katie mentioned, around was our outreach. So if you remember last January, 2024, not this 2 months, a year ago, if you can get there, we had a couple of things happening with the weather. We had an Arctic storm, right? So it was about -19. That was before the snow came. These pictures are capturing when the snow arrived right after. And during this time, actually, we also became witnesses. I got a call saying, Amanda, can you help us support the residents living in Oppenheimer Park? All of a sudden, the city wants them to leave a decampment, a displacement, an eviction. So I went, and what I thought was going to be one day turned into a 60-day of consecutive showing up, because once you go and build relationships, you can't help stay away. That's a different, longer story. But when it came to the weather, and amongst doing that advocacy work for those residents there, really terrible weather was upon us. So the Arctic weather that turned into the snowstorm, I'd say it was about at least 2 weeks of this community, just an onslaught of weather. So many unhoused people that did not have life-saving cold weather needs like toques, gloves, blankets, obviously tents, sleeping bags, etc. And so we sprang into action, as we do, and we were able to collect so many items. We collected so many items because of so many of you on this call. When we make a call, you folks respond and answer. And we were able to distribute to the encampments at Crab Park and Oppenheimer Park, and then also going to other centers around the community, grassroots groups that don't have the same reach as First United. So really leveraging our communities and supporting the rest of folks doing important work. In this interim period, right, we're rebuilding a building. We're in 6 different locations. We're used to people coming to us to get this stuff, right? And so what's been so great about this transition period is really stretching ourselves to get out into community more, to hand out these items. If you were following along with us yet again in January, another weather event happened. I know this is about last fiscal year, but in brief, I just want to mention, winter happens every year and something like this happens every year. But meanwhile, officials don't seem to be quite prepared. So this year we didn't have to do any outreach to encampments because they no longer exist. There's still, homelessness is persistent, but encampments, as we've seen them before, have been no longer. They've been displaced from our eyesight anyway right now. And so what we did is we spent more time going to warming centers and emergency weather response. These are things that are activated when weather hits a certain temperature, kind of arbitrary actually. One of them is activated when we hit -4. Or feels like -4. I don't really know if there's evidence-based data on why -4 is the number that we've selected as a city, but when it reaches -4, the city activates their warming center plan. And what we did at First United is we actually went to the warming centers and actually gave out items at these places, because those places don't have the supplies. They have an important roof over the head, but they don't have sleeping bags, blankets, toques, etc. So we've been doing that, and I think it's just an amazing way that we show that dignity of having people have the life-saving supports that they need to survive for the day, no matter what the weather is. But here are some examples during extreme cold weather. So thank you. I think I'm passing it back to Katie.
You are. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. I love looking at those photos so much. I still have very vivid memories of layering up, taking stuff out to community. It feels good, and it's the very least we can do. Really, really proud to have been a part of that work. So the next guiding principle that we are led by is belonging. And when we say belonging, we mean alleviating social isolation. It's about creating spaces where people can gather and heal, and creating spaces for ceremony and worship. And so I'm going to invite Lauren Sanders up again to speak about her work creating belonging through our spiritual care program. Over to you, Lauren.
Hey, everybody. So our motto in the spiritual care department is everyone's spirit deserves to be cared for. It is spiritual care's job to create spaces where people can be brave, thoughtful, and reflective. The love with which God created everything is within each of us. While the city of Vancouver or other systems and institutions might believe otherwise, we recognize the divine spark of the Creator in each other. If a community member or a staff member or a board member reaches out, then I am your chaplain. Our department bridges between all programs and actions of First United. In nonprofit lingo, we provide a wide range of spiritual services. We connect with people's spirit through creative and expressive arts like beading, textiles, painting, and coloring. Last year for Lent, we explored a grief map through pour painting, and you can check that out on First United's YouTube page. We offer multi-faith, trauma-informed spiritual care using the principles of Indigenous cultural safety. We offer care for all spiritualities, including some types of ceremonies. Professionally, we listen and we do not judge. Whether it's providing spiritual care at the shelter through food truck fellowship or blessings and affirmations at the help desk, or us pulling a wagon of roses to give out to folks in our neighborhood on Red Dress Day, or so many other ways, we answer the question of who is my neighbor simply. You are. You are our neighbor. You belong to our community. So come check us out.
Thanks, Lauren. And now justice. So when we say justice, we mean working to break cycles of oppression. It's about systems change, breaking stigma, changing legislation, and influencing policies to create a more equitable society. And to explain our work in justice, I will introduce our Director of Systems Change and Legal, Sarah Marsden, and pass it over to her.
Hi there. I'm so happy to see people today and have the chance to talk a little bit about what we did in systems change last year. It was a super exciting year, and I'd like to highlight 3 big changes and how these changes helped people, and talk about a little bit about how we're going to be building on it in the next year. So one major change, you can see there's a lot on the slide here, and one major change that was really important for inclusion and diversity and dignity in housing was to change the law, advocate for the law to be changed so that people with babies and children who are renting their homes cannot get charged more for having babies and children, which sounds like it should never have been the law in the first place, but it was, because they were treated the same as any extra occupant. So if you had something in your lease saying extra occupants are going to cost you more, then that would be applied if you had a baby or if a child joined a family in any way. So now we advocated for this change, and the government changed the law. Landlords are no longer allowed to charge extra when a baby or child joins a family, and that applies as well to extended family or actually any child under 19 who's living in that household. And what it means for people is that families don't have to worry about unexpected rent increases if they are welcoming a baby, or if a child is joining their family, or if custody arrangements change, or any number of other things. Makes rental housing more inclusive and removes some of the risk of excess costs and homelessness and displacement for families. Second one I want to mention is around landlords' use evictions, and specifically bad faith landlords use evictions, which we just saw a lot of in the advocacy program and in our data from the eviction survey. And what that is when landlords use the landlord's use, sorry, that's bad grammar. When landlords say that a family member is moving in, or that a purchaser is moving in, but that's really not the case. Actually, they just want to increase the rent. There are legitimate cases of landlords needing to use their property, but we saw a lot of situations where it was just being used to kick out tenants and to raise the rent because rentals have been so scarce and because of the housing crisis. So we were able to document that was happening from the data we gathered in the eviction survey, and we showed how it resulted in homelessness and displacement. And after we delivered our recommendations to the government, they changed the law. And now landlords who want to evict tenants for landlord's use have to use a special web portal. They have to provide certain information. They're being tracked. They have to give more notice to the tenant. Tenant has some stronger appeal rights. So just more protection around that situation, and knowing that the government is also looking to see what's happening with that type of eviction. Um, that's going to be a huge change for people. Means that tenants are better protected, and they're better protected from the outcomes of that as well. And we're going to continue to watch and see what happens with landlords' use evictions as well. And the final thing I wanted to mention with systems change is around something that's called 48-hour order of possession. And this is something that I think a lot of people don't know about unless they've been in an eviction hearing. And generally in eviction hearings, if a tenant loses their eviction hearing, they would get a 48-hour notice, which means you lost your case. Okay, you have to leave in 48 hours. And we saw that resulting in homelessness, because it's obviously not really possible for people to find housing within 48 hours. So we documented that was the norm. Again, we documented what the impacts were on sort of a larger scale across BC. And following our advocacy to government, we saw a change to policy at the tenancy branch, which now say the timeline should be at least 7 days. And that is also not enough time to find a new place, but it is a step in the right direction. And they have made it very clear that decision makers can give longer time to people. So just making clear that they have the discretion to do that lets our advocates make those arguments. So it's not just this default that people get evicted in 2 days. So those are the 3 areas I wanted to highlight where we saw concrete changes and we can see the impacts of them. Like with that 48-hour notice, I've looked at the numbers from the RTB and it's dropped enormously. They're not being issued in the same way anymore. So that's really exciting to see. And a couple of other areas that we're continuing to focus on this year that we were working on last year as well. One of them is cooling rights, so that people have the right to use cooling equipment, such as air conditioners, when they're in a rental home. So it's something that we've seen affecting quite a few people's health during heat waves, and also an inclusion and disability access issue. So we saw some movement on this last year, but we're not quite at the point where people's rights are being safeguarded in sort of an enforceable way. So we're still working on that. And another one is pets and rental housing, something that we advocated for, again, to make sure that tenants are allowed to have pets. And we did see Premier Eby promise that he would prohibit no pets clauses, but we haven't seen a policy change on that. So we're gonna be looking for some changes on that as well in the coming months. And just thanks so much for listening. I've said a lot about this work. I'm just so grateful to be here and to be reporting on this.
I just love hearing our staff talk about their work. I'm often in the position where I'm reporting back to donors, funders, supporters about, what's happening here. And honestly, getting to listen to them talk about it themselves is just so much better. So very, very grateful for you, Sarah, and for you, Lauren, to be here talking about your work. So that's what we've been doing in terms of our programs in the last year. But as I'm sure you know, we're also building a building. We've got some construction happening. And last year we had a really lovely, really beautiful and touching ceremony as part of that. And so I will let Amanda explain what that was.
Thank you. Hello. So we're looking at Musqueam Elder Shane Point, amazing human, and he performed a ground blessing just before we were ready to do construction. And it's letting the land know that what is going to be built on site. He buried a copper plate along with the medicines, red ochre and eagle down. And this typically, historically, copper was placed under the support pole of a longhouse to conduct good spirits, good energy of the site. And for our site, the copper was placed beneath one of the main footings in order to surround the house with positive energy to uplift and protect the builders and the future occupiers of the space, which was a beautiful ceremony. And at the time, so this was, as you can see, November 6th, it's like a year and a few months ago, we were so happy to announce we had $8 million left to raise of our $30 million First Forward Capital Campaign project. And I know this isn't last fiscal year, but of course I want to share that as of recently, we have 3.8 million left to raise. So we raised another almost 5 million, 4.2 million between that space from that ceremony to today, which is a quicker pace than we were expecting. We're really excited by a continued generosity. It's overwhelming from our communities of faith, our donors, corporations, everyone coming together to really see this project through has been overwhelming. And so the timeline is we're done December 2025, and then occupancy. So when we're allowed to move in, because there's going to have to be some, permits, occupancy, all those good fun things, take a few more months. So it should be early 2026 that we're in there and operating our programs. And with that, financials. There wouldn't be an AGM coming up after this. There wouldn't be a reflecting on the year without talking financials, right? And so to do what we do, to have the impact we have, and to keep trying to have, which is to achieve, of course, a vision where we can be a neighborhood where everybody's worth is celebrated and all people thrive. We know as an organization, we also need to have stability, and stability is absolutely critical. So we can be a consistent presence in this community, delivering reliable, trustworthy services that people can rely on. Let's not forget that many community members experience significant instability and unpredictability in their lives, which can obviously increase stress and a variety of things. So when we define stability here as an organization, we're talking about building capacity with building, of course, our strong governance. Our board is here and all of our board committees. We have operation plan, management practices in our administrative departments, development, communications, operations, IT, human resources, and then of course our finance. So we are so pleased to share that we have posted another surplus for our fiscal, which now means that we are 5 years in a row of those having a surplus. I express tremendous gratitude to so many people on this call, of course, our board members, our finance committee, Rob, who's joining us, who's our Senior Director of Admin and Finances, Katie, who's moderating us today, our Director of Development and Communications, is holding lots of expenses and revenue side of things. And then, of course, our directors joining us here today in programs. We have Keely, and we have Sarah in legal. So I hope I didn't miss anyone, but I feel like that's who I saw. So I just really want to raise my hands, lift you folks up to the work that all of you do in creating that, continuing to create that alignment and stability that we need to be able to do the work with consistency and reliability in this community. We've been here 140 years. We're celebrating 140 years in this community, and our intent to continue to do so. And I just highlighting one thing when it comes to the finances, that big government thing that we see in there. I just do want to underscore that we see 45% of our revenues comes from the government. It comes from basically 95% of that is BC housing, and that's for our shelter. So outside of the shelter, the programming that we do is basically all private fundraising, funders, communities of faith, you folks here. I can't express my gratitude enough for what you do and how you trust us with your resources to move forward and do the work in this community. So thank you so much, Katie.
It's a perfect little tee up and segue. I can only echo exactly what Amanda said. We had a fantastic year. Together we served over 10,000 people. We changed laws, and we made real, clear, tangible progress on providing dignity, belonging, and justice to the people in this community. And the fact that we were able to do all this is because of so many of you joining us here today. You can see over 2,000 of you contributed over $1.7 million. And this is, from folks like me and you. This isn't massive corporations. This isn't funders. These are just people who believe in our work. Nearly 400 frontline monthly donors. This is astounding to me. And, to kind of break that down a little bit, especially in summer months, individual one-time donations really kind of slow down, and that's very normal. That happens at a lot of places. And monthly donors are the folks who enable us to plan to be consistent, to keep showing up, to paying our bills, operating our programs in those summer months when, you know, other big campaigns aren't going on. And so we just have so much love and care for our Frontline Monthly donors. And then of course, our Friends of First, folks who have left a gift to First United in their will. This is the most, you know, ultimate legacy that carries on beyond one's lifetime. And just thank you from all of us, all of our staff, the board of directors. Thank you so much, so sincerely, for being partners in this work. We truly couldn't do it without your help. And with that, so we've got about 15 minutes left, which is an all right amount of time. We've got our town hall session. So we ask people to send in questions in advance about what's going on in the Downtown Eastside with the City of Vancouver, pause on supportive housing, and the Downtown Eastside Local Area Plan. A number of you did send in questions, which is fantastic. Amanda and I are going to be addressing those. And as more questions come up, feel free to type them into the chat box. And if you see a question that you like, you're interested in, you're curious about, click the little like love or thumbs up button to kind of upvote it. And then we'll find the questions that have the most kind of loves or upvotes, and we'll answer those as well. And if we can't get to everything today, we will certainly follow up with you via email. So our first question here, Amanda, I'll read it off if you like, and you can answer it.
A town hall, bring it on. Among friends though, this town hall. Yeah, okay.
First question. In the news recently, First United was mobilizing in opposition to the No Net New supportive housing motion. What does supportive housing mean, and what will this new motion do?
Supportive housing meaning what will this new motion do? I don't know if y'all were following along on the news the last few weeks. But First United definitely showed up and had some words about how we felt about this. But I think it's important to start, of course, with what is supportive housing. So supportive housing is defined in BC. It's a very specific thing, and it's a type of support or type of affordable housing that provides both a home and on-site services for people who are experiencing or at risk of homelessness. So some key features: it's permanent housing, it's 24/7 support services, which can include food programs, mental health support, life training skills, addiction recovery services. Lots of different important services on a spectrum are included in this. It's usually low or no barrier to entry. It's operated by nonprofits, and they often use, of course, a harm reduction approach. Supportive housing is usually subsidized, and just to note that there's 6,200 units of supportive housing in Vancouver. And so that's just like, let's put us there. And so what this motion did that Ken Sim put forward that was passed on February 26th was to pause no net new supportive housing in the city of Vancouver. And the rationale that he used was that the city of Vancouver is 25% of the population, but holds 77% of the supportive housing in the city of Vancouver. And he is trying to get the rest of Metro Vancouver to step up and build more supportive housing. So I'm aligned with, we all need to do our parts and step up, because we know that homelessness in the Metro Vancouver region has increased 30% since 2020. I'm curious, after the latest homeless count last week, what those numbers will now say. But there's some other stats in there that he hasn't really brought up, that of the homeless population though, 50% of the homeless population does live in Vancouver. And there's another stat in there that makes us a bit uncomfortable, how it's used or not used or framed, is that people are migrating into the city of Vancouver to use our supportive housing, like to get into housing here, because we just keep building so much. So a couple things there. When homeless people become homeless, 78% of people in Vancouver became unhoused in Vancouver. So people in Vancouver already have a home, they just are looking for a house. So I think it's an obligation of ours to look after the people who are in Vancouver who became unhoused in Vancouver. And also, there is a wait list of 3,000 people on the supportive housing wait list in the city of Vancouver. So migrating to Vancouver to get housing is probably not the best strategy for you if you are unhoused. So there's some misinformation or lack of all of the data and the full picture of this current elected government of majority. So we were very against it. And so what does this mean that since it's passed? Well, let's just put this into context. That means that our project, our redevelopment project, under this new criteria would not have been approved by the city of Vancouver. Our project would not have been approved by the city of Vancouver. To say, make that make sense, right? But in a greater context to this, this means, like, when people ask me and all the media, it's like, what is this going to mean? Well, it's going to mean homelessness is going to increase. We're going to see more encampments. We're going to see more public drug use. We're going to see more human waste on the streets, and we're actually going to see more deaths. And I want to just be mindful and reflect on the stat, but homeless people are more at risk to die. And the latest data that came out from 2023 that we have is 458 people who are unhoused died in 2023, tripling the amount of people that were unhoused who have passed since 2020. This is an emergency. It's no longer a crisis. And when we know that housing is an intervention and a solution to this emergency, we know we need to be building more and not less. So what's happening right now is quite alarming for us. I'll stop there because there's only 7 minutes left on that one. Okay.
Thanks, Amanda.
Yeah, you're welcome. What's next?
Next up, are non-Indigenous people eligible for housing in the new building?
Say that again, sorry?
Are non-Indigenous people
Oh.
eligible for housing in our new building?
Okay, so we are building 7 floors of Indigenous social and supportive housing, so operated by Illuminated Housing. So it is intended to be service to Indigenous folks. And the reason that is several reasons, is First United has always responded to the greatest need in the community. And so if the population in this community is 40% self-identifying urban Indigenous and the rest of Vancouver or Metro Vancouver even is 2 to 4%, that statistic shows us that there is a racialization of poverty, that disproportionate amount of representation of unhoused in this community living in deep poverty. And so we wanted to respond and do something about it. Further to that, a few years ago in the strategic plan, First United had said that they wanted to do reconciliation in action. So to actually do reconciliation, go beyond a land acknowledgement, let's say, we wanted to also do that action by building the housing that this community needs. We also, and a comment on reconciliation in action too, again, I want to say this with, the heaviness that it is First United is part of the United Church, and the United Church was part of the residential schools, operated residential schools in the 20th century. And the United Church has offered a couple of apologies, and I truly believe that this action of reconciliation is an extension of apology and something, of course, of when we say reconciliation in action, what we're doing. It's not only been a strategic priority at First United, it is part of the United Church's priority as well. It's part of our government's priority. I mean, actually, the city of Vancouver calls itself a city of reconciliation. The federal government has priorities, and so does the province. And so actually, based on that, there was some other funding that we could leverage to put into the capital of the housing so that we could keep rents lower. So there was a variety of reasons that we have chosen to do this. Thank you.
Okay. If Wish Drop-In, which began out of First United Church decades ago in the 80s, closes its drop-in and outreach services, is First United open to having the service move back?
Yeah, thank you for that question. So Wish, if you all are aware of what Wish Women's Resource Center is, that they just celebrated their 40th anniversary this year. And in the 1980s, of course, First United brought on this nonprofit. It wasn't a nonprofit at the time, this program, because they were pushed out of a community. They're sex workers, a whole bunch of sex workers, not in my backyard, cops, neighborhood business, I believe the Mount Pleasant BIA didn't want them in the neighborhood. So First United welcomed them, of course. as we do and respond into our doors in our church. And then when they had built enough of capacity, they went off site. They are undergoing some serious financial issues right now and cut off from funding, which is deeply alarming. So I also want to take us another way with this too. So how First United is responding, not just will we, how we're responding to this situation and crisis around women's safety is a lot of people also ask me, is the shelter coming back to the new 320? So no, our shelter right now that's co-ed off-site is going to stay where it is. And the reason we did that is we wanted to maximize square footage for safe, permanent, affordable housing on our site and, triple our program size. Yet, in addition to that, our program area that we're building in the new building actually has a day sleeping shelter. And the day sleeping shelter is going to be for women only, self-identifying women. And it's going to have like 18 to 22 mats, depending on the code report at the time. But anyway, different topic. And so from that, we want to respond to the need to serve women's safety in this community. About 14% of women say that they feel safe in co-ed spaces, which is an alarming statistic. We want to also do something about that and come up with safer ways for women to go into co-ed spaces that are still safe for them. So we are going to do that. In addition, the multi-purpose room adjacent to that, we're having conversations about how we can program that for women's only, especially in light of what we are hearing, not just with WISH, thank you whoever asked that question, but also PACE and also ATIRA. 3 women's centers the last 2 weeks have lost funding and have closed their programming, which is unacceptable. So yes, and anything's on the table to respond to this community's needs. Thank you.
All right, we're at 5:12, so I think this might be the last one we can get to, but for those of you who submitted questions in advance or in the chat, we will follow up with you by email. So this last question is there statistical information on how many people ended up in the Downtown Eastside, broken down by percentages, and possibly more detailed information, such as because of domestic abuse, unemployment, or mental illness?
Well, there's lots of reports out there. So one of the best reports that comes out every other year is the Homeless Services of BC, HSABC, does the homeless count. And so when they do the homeless count, they have a variety of questions that they ask folks who are in shelters, unhoused, etc. And so they can glean some data from that. And for instance, some of the statistics are, here's a spoiler alert, what's the number one reason you're homeless? I can't afford rent is the number one reason across the board. Often other statistics are around, it's around probably 10 to 15% of people. It's because of conflict with a spouse or partner, and it's usually a women's safety issue, which is really alarming as well. And also self-identifying when people say that they become unhoused because of mental health issues. But we have the biggest report that we go off of with that about why people become unhoused, or the statistics, or why people come to the Downtown Eastside or here in the Downtown Eastside, is because of or that homelessness data report that comes out. I do want to mention though, the data statistics of people who are unhoused or in the Downtown Eastside is a much broader, longer conversation to have around how we are our underinvestment, lack of infrastructure, colonial mindsets, failed policies, et cetera, and so forth, have created conditions that we see before us. And like I said, when people become unhoused, they're typically a resident of the city that they become unhoused in. So I think that 78% statistic of people are residents of Vancouver. And I guess we'll have to follow up with more questions. Are there more? Darn.
There are, but I want to make sure everybody has time to take a nice little break. So that brings us to 5:15. Thank you so much for joining us, everybody. So as you might know from the email notifications, we have our AGM starting at 5:30. It's in this Zoom room, so you can stay on or you can exit and come back in, whatever you like. But you're more than welcome to join for some very riveting governance work. And another thing that you might know is every time we host Toast Talks, we have a draw for a $25 gift certificate from our friends over at Terra Breads. And today's winner of that gift card is Lauren Patton. Congratulations, Lauren. So
Who's that?
our team will be in touch with you to confirm your mailing address. If we don't have it, but we should have your email. So congratulations to you. If this is the last we're going to see of you, if you're not sticking around for the AGM, thank you so much for coming, for joining us. Really appreciate that we do, that you'll stick around for our AGM.